Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Man Badger Fan. I'm your host, Philip Arthur Schultz Jr. the Third. With me is Chris Smith 9, the D4 respondent. Chris, this is a new era of the Man Sports Fan podcast, net, so to speak. You want to kind of talk about what we're doing here, why we're doing it, what's going on with it?
Yeah, the Man Sports Fan is evolving into mini podcasts where we focus on singular topics. So Phil and I have a long history with Badger basketball, and we want a space to be able to talk a lot about Badger basketball. So hence the Man Badger Fan. And as a teaser, I believe we will also be doing some Man Cubs fan and Man Packers fan. Little tease for the future there.
Yeah, and I mean, on the Man Sports Fan, we have talked about the Badgers. It's usually been Chris, it's been me, but it's been short, kind of to the point. And I think for us, especially as, Wisconsin Badger basketball this year has been really, really good. We just got this notion that, man, we should actually just center a podcast on this. And so, yeah, we're here. It's kind of a reaction show to what happened today. So we're starting on a tough note, to be honest. It's not really where we wanted to start per se, but we'll get into it. Before we do though, yeah.
Do you remember last year when we rebooted Man Sports Fan? Our first podcast was also coming off of a disappointing Badger loss against Penn State. I don't know if you remember that, but they were on this heater, and then we're doing the podcast, and they lost. So I hope this is not a bad omen.
Is that the game where Penn State scored 90 points on us?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
And there was that one guy that just kept hitting everything. Gosh, that was awful. I mean, this one, it feels a little worse. This is at home. I'm not going to lie. It feels a little worse. But, again, we'll get into it. We did want to talk about the performance enhancers, which is our fantasy baseball league. Chris Smith 9 has been running this for the last 15 years.
Yeah, 2007 or 6 was the first year. It's one of those 2 years.
Okay, so that's almost 19 years. And so, yeah, we're having our draft next week. Fantasy baseball starts in a week for us. Chris, you excited? How you feeling? You ready for it?
I'm excited. I wasn't that good last year, so I was able to keep some of my early picks in the draft. So I'm excited. I have 2 second-round picks and a first-round pick. It's just an anomaly for me. So I'm excited to be on the clock before round 4.
Yeah, I mean, I have number 5 and number 8 going into the first round. I haven't had a first-round pick, I think, in 3 or 4 years. So we're in the same boat, man. It's going to be fun. Who are your keepers? In this league, you could have up to 3 keepers. We used to do a minor leaguer keeper. We don't do that anymore. But Chris, who are your 3 keepers, and who is close on the list that you kind of left off?
Yeah, so my keepers are Kyle Tucker. To me, he was a lock. Trey Turner, basically a lock for me. And then I was between Michael Harris and James Wood. Frem, thank you for James Wood again. Appreciate that. But I went with Michael Harris because I think I trust him more. James Wood could have a sophomore slump. Didn't play the whole season last year, so Michael Harris just feels safe for 300 and maybe 20 homers and 20 stolen bases.
Yeah. I had a weird year where I kind of went for it at one point, and then it kind of the wheels fell off. So I was able to get some draft capital back, but so my keepers are not that good at all. It's Wyatt Langford, Jackson Merrill, and Lawrence Butler. So it is the youth movement that I'm running here. But really excited to have 2 picks in the first round, 1 in the second. Should be able to build up some pretty good. I was looking at the first 5, kind of the way CBS ranked it. I feel pretty good with who I'm going to get at 5. I don't know if you've looked at it yet or looked into it, but
yeah. So I'm at 6. I have a clear top 6 as well. I'm feeling pretty good.
Okay. Yeah, man, it's gonna be awesome. I can't believe it's here.
I
Basically, yeah,
know.
baseball's in a month.
It's awesome. Spring
When's
training started. Here we
yeah,
go.
yeah. When's the opening Tokyo game?
It's like early. It's like mid to. It's like in the 20s range of March. It's really early.
Is that Cubs Dodgers? Does that
Yeah.
sound right? Man, it's
Yeah,
gonna
it's
be awesome.
Imanaga against Yamamoto, I think, too, which will be cool.
It'd be so awesome, man. Well, I know we said this is a Badger basketball podcast, but we just had to bring up some baseball because we're pumped. We're pumped. Um, I'm going to spring this on Chris. See, we chatted. You know, we usually have some kind of weird thing we talk about at the beginning, and we are kind of, kind of short on answers tonight. And then I saw this in my on my shelf. If you're just listening to the podcast, it is a recorder. Chris, do you remember playing your recorder?
I do. Middle school. I remember a specific recorder unit that we went through in
Recorder
music
unit
class, and it was awesome.
in middle school.
Middle school.
So you went past elementary school
Mm-hmm.
into middle school recorder.
Yes, sir.
Gosh, that's awesome. Yeah, I like, you know, I went to a wedding and the guy opening the wedding played recorder. And he played like a whole it was unbelievably good. He played like Celine Dion's My Heart Will Go On. It was amazing. But it made
That
me
is.
want to like get back into it, you know?
Yeah, I feel like anyone
So
could play the recorder. Like it's a nice beginner instrument.
this is an American elementary staple. I wonder if they still. I gotta imagine they still do it. You know,
Sure hope so. I'll find
get
out in
your
a few years
bearings.
with Kellen here.
Yeah, I got this at Savers, so this will be for my children as they grow up here. All right, well let's jump into it. Yeah, and there's a lot we could talk about here. Chris, as you're watching the game, you're there. What seat were you in?
So I'm behind the basket on the Badgers bench side.
Okay, and you're 5 rows up.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're right in the thick of it, really in the heart of the Kohl Center. Just tell me what you were experiencing and feeling as the game was going. Yeah, and just talk about what really stood out to you in the game. Again, Badgers lost 77-73 in overtime against the Oregon Ducks. So, yeah, what really stood out to you with the game?
Uh, going in, I was a little nervous. This felt like your typical trap game scenario, coming off of two sort of high profile wins. And here's the thing: I spent the last 3 days since that Illinois game listening to different podcasts and things like that, and everybody's talking about the Badgers. I feel like we went the whole season with people just like they're flying under the radar, and now CBS is talking about them. The Field of 68's talking about them. ESPN's talking about them. And it just Oregon's been playing really well. I think they're on a 5-game winning streak, and it just didn't settle. Didn't feel settled at the game today. And it's interesting because even as we built a lead in the first half, and Oregon kind of, I think they got it down to 12 at the half, and even in the second half, we got up 15, and it stayed consistently between 10 and 15 for the majority of the half. It just felt like we couldn't put the game away. We didn't shoot well from the three today, and it just felt like every time we had a chance to go up beyond 15, we just sort of stalled out or had a turnover. And so Oregon was able to just stay in the game long enough, and we'll talk about what happened towards the end of the game, but they just sort of chipped away, and they did steal the momentum away from the Kohl Center. I thought it was a good atmosphere overall, but towards the end of the game, when they started coming back, it just didn't feel like the crowd kind of was as stunned as the players, I think. And as weird as that sounds, but it was just hard. You just didn't have that collective feeling that things were heading in the right direction.
Yeah, I actually, the Badgers didn't shoot well. You talked about from three. I think they were 7 of 28. Tanji was 2 for 10. Blackwell is 0 for 6. I mean, those are the two big contributors to that. I thought they played really well for 35 minutes of the game. It wasn't perfect basketball. Um, Oregon played super physical. The refs were letting them play physical. I thought we actually responded well to that. I didn't think we backed down from that in any way. But the last 5, 6 minutes or so, they start pressing us. And that actually didn't really seem to bother them either, right? They were kind of able to get over half court. I think it did take them out of some of their rhythm. But I think they had 6 turnovers in the last 3 minutes. The last point they score is 66, and that's they're up 66 to 57 with 3.5 to go. At that point, you think, okay, maybe Oregon makes a little bit of a run. Maybe they get down to 2 possessions, but we've been clutch all year. Tanji said tough shots. I think this press got them a little bit out of their funk, but more so, I think Tanji and Blackwell, I think, try to take over, right? And they've done this all year, and it's worked pretty well. I think the one Blackwell missed for us is the UCLA game, right, where he takes it in the lane. We end up losing by 2. I think he gets blocked. And so this has kind of worked for the Badgers, but, we were going down low for the first 30 minutes of the game and almost on some level unstoppable. Crowell and Winters were both really efficient, and it just felt like, especially in the pick and roll, man, they couldn't stop it. But you could tell, especially in the last 3 or 4 minutes, Crowell did not want to take the 3. That was for sure happening. He did not want to shoot it. And it just felt like some of the Badgers are waiting for Tanji or Blackwell to make a play, or for somebody to make a play finally. And here's the thing. I mean, you're up 66 to 63 with 18 seconds to go, and you can't get the ball in bounds twice in a row. It's just one of these weird fluke games in my head. If you get the ball in, you're going to get fouled. You have to get it in again, but you're the 11th ranked team in the nation. You got to get the ball in there. And I think they lost their heads a little bit. And I think the pressure got to them because they were up 17 in this game at one point. And so it really was a collapse that we just haven't seen from the Badgers all year. So I guess in my mind, what's like the play that was either like play of the game, kind of the dagger in your mind, or however you want to describe it? What was that for you?
To me, the play of the game was that 3 that Oregon hit at the end of the second half. I mean, that was as confident. I mean, being there, that was as confident of a shot you could have in that moment. I'm pretty sure it was well behind the 3-point line.
Yeah,
but it just felt like
behind.
There was a game, I can't remember how many years ago, when we played Maryland, and they hit a game-winning 3. It felt eerily similar to where when that shot went up, you just knew it was going to go in. And to me, that changed everything. Because even though we forced overtime, and I'm curious at some point here to talk about Max Klesmit taking that last shot. But even when it went to overtime, not all overtimes are created equal. And this one felt like Oregon had all the momentum. And even when Winter hit that 3 to take the lead in overtime, it just never felt comfortable because their big guy Biddle was just absolutely bruising Crowell down low. And so that to me is that's a huge point in the game, right? Biddle has 3 fouls in the first half. He's not really on the floor much, but him in the second half didn't get any more fouls, and he just absolutely destroyed our bigs, which has been our problem all year, right? We talked about this a lot. Is when we go against physical opposing bigs, that turns out to be our kryptonite. And tonight, same thing. So it's not only the bigs, but then the ball pressure on top of it. Oregon's a bad matchup for us. So my play was the 3 to go to overtime because it was an incredible shot.
Well, and here's the thing about Shellstat. I mean, that guy could get a shot anytime he wanted in that game. Nobody could really guard him, right? I mean, I think there was one possession where Kamari McGee looked really good against him. Other than that guy could get a shot anytime he wanted to. In fact, I'm surprised they didn't drop more plays for him because he was just that much quicker than our guards defensively. And so, yeah, that was an incredible shot. He's a good player. He's a fun player to watch.
Yeah, a couple weeks ago they played Michigan State and he had like 20 points in the first half on the road. So he's a really good player. I was impressed.
For me, and again, I already brought it up. The play is the inbounds play. You don't get the inbounds ball in. Klesmet throws it to Blackwell super hard. It's really like a weird pass. It's like right at his knees. Um, Again, kind of out of control, not focused. And to me, that is the play of the game because if you get that ball in, uh, I think they would have had to get one more foul, but you're going to go to the line, and we're the best free throw shooting team in the nation. Roughly 84%. You're gonna at least hit. I think you're gonna hit one. I think we just would have escaped the game. Um, but you can't get the ball in twice in a row. And so to me, that is the play of the game. And that feels like a little bit cheeky or kind of like, okay, like I'm not giving credit to what Oregon did. And Oregon was great. But I think it's that play that kind of encapsulated the last 4 minutes. It was rushed. It was, let's try to, somebody make a play. Somebody please make a play. You turn the ball over 6 times. And so I think that last turnover really in regulation. Yeah, I mean, it created the scenario where Oregon could actually tie it up.
Well, and Blackwell catches that ball 99 out of 100 times, right? But just that's what momentum does in a game. And so
Yes.
when people say they don't believe in momentum, I completely disagree with that sentiment.
Oh, yeah. It's just crazy, too, that you're at home. You think that you get momentum there at some point in those last 4 or 5 minutes, and we just never could do it. We could never do it. To you, who is the player of the game? Yeah, like who for the Badgers? Who's the guy that stood out to you the most?
I really like what Kamari McGee did today. He only played 18 minutes, which doesn't feel like enough in retrospect. But he had 7 points. He was 3 for 5 from the field. But he contributed elsewhere: 2 rebounds, 2 assists, 3 steals. I mean, he was really good defensively. Um, the only thing I don't like about Kamari, and he's done this like the last couple games, is where he'll drive to the lane and try to challenge these guys that are like 6'8", 6'9". It's like I wish he would cut that out of his game. But he was a real difference maker for the Badgers today. On both ends of the floor, he had another corner three. It's actually his first 3-point attempt in like 3 games. It's been a while.
Dang.
But he did bring some instant offense and defense. He just didn't get on the floor enough, and that was all because of game script, as the game was kind of falling apart at the end. But I wonder too, like maybe he should have been in the game more at the end. Like he is the guy that I feel confident with the ball in his hands that he's just not going to make a mistake. So probably would have liked to see about 22 to 25 minutes instead of 18.
Yeah, for me, and again, this is the first 35 minutes of the game. It's Stephen Crowell. When he is playing well, we are a very, very tough team to beat. He can shoot the three. He was super efficient at the bucket today. He did play with a lot of aggressiveness. I thought he played really well these first 35 minutes. And then just reverted back a little bit, or just the pressure. And I don't think his teammates were helping him that much with some of these passes, but he had 6 turnovers, so to say he's the player of the game is tough for me even a little bit. But I think across the board, when you look at especially efficiency of players, I thought he was by far the most efficient for us, today in terms of the starters. But overall, just a disappointing last 5 minutes, man. That was just so tough. For you, what is the turning point?
So I have two, one for each half. So first half, Badgers go up 38-21 with 2 minutes to go. And then they let Oregon go on a 5-0 run to end the half. And I'll tell you, this is not the first time this year that we've let a team sort of get back into a game towards the end of a half, and we had a chance to go for the kill shot. So if Oregon doesn't go on that 5-0 run, I don't even know if that second half happens. We could have potentially put them out of their misery well before that. But in the second half, to me, it was, I'm trying to pull up the exact moment in the game. Okay, so right here, Badgers are up 66-61. Oregon just made a basket. And Crowell gets that offensive foul, which just seemed to alter the momentum. And in fact, there was another moment with Crowell, I think it was right before that, where he had a turnover. We had the ball at the top of the key, and he just kind of lost the ball. Both times I believe we were up 5, and those were just killer moments in the game.
Yeah, I think for me it's the turnover by John Blackwell, 114 to go. It's 61-66. You're still up 2 possessions. It's a minute to go. And you let a steal happen in a place where you really shouldn't on the court. And it was one of those things where, man, these guards in particular, Tanji and Blackwell, were just trying to make that last play. It was like that last big play of the game, and couldn't do it. And so I think that to me is where I think at that point is when they get up to 1 possession. It's 66-63, and then we kind of know the rest that happened. Are you okay with Klesmit taking that final shot, Guard not calling a timeout? He did have some thoughts on it. Guard had some thoughts on it afterward. We could talk about that in a second, but what was your initial thought as that was happening?
So the Bo Ryan, Greg Gard principle is that you don't take the timeout there. And I'm totally fine with that. I've actually never had an issue. What I don't like is it felt like in that moment we reverted back to the last 25 years of Badger basketball, where it's just give the ball to the point guard, and just let him stand there and then let him make his own shot. And
yeah,
to me, like Klesmit hit a big jumper against Purdue last year in the Big Ten tournament to make it to the championship game. But this version of Max Klesmit this year just hasn't been that guy. He hasn't been clutch. And we have guys on the team that can create their own shot better in Blackwell and Tanji. And both those guys can not only create their own shot, but they can get to the rim. In that moment, I would have loved to see us challenge Oregon at the rim. And so Klesmit just standing there, and then, I mean, he got a good shot. He actually was, that's a shot he can make. But I would prefer to have the ball in Blackwell or Tanji's hand at the end of that game to let one of them make a play. So I was a little disappointed in that, but I can't be upset with the look that Klesmit got. I mean, it was a jumper from the free throw line with no one in his face. What about you?
Yeah, I'm totally okay with it. And the guard said at the end in his presser that in essence he thought that Oregon would switch their defense, and so he didn't want to create a play or give him a chance to do that, and so he let it go. I'm on the fence if I want Klesmit taking that shot, kind of like you, and yet he has had clutch moments for us, and I actually thought he played really well, throughout the game. In fact, Tanji and Blackwell just didn't shoot well. They really both didn't shoot well, especially in that last 3-minute stretch. So I'm actually okay with him taking the shot, especially with what he got, because it's just weird. 6 seconds, right? In my head, I'm saying go, 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 and yet he knew exactly what he was doing, and got a decent look. So overall, I am okay with it. But like you, this is the last 25 years of Wisconsin Badger basketball. Right, for a long time, for a couple of years, it was Jordan Taylor who would have to do that, and he had some insane shots in that scenario. I mean, we've had other Badger players do that throughout their in their careers.
Right, go down the line: Trayvon Jackson, Cameron Taylor, Jordan Taylor. I mean, Chucky Hepburn.
Yeah, so that has worked. I'm like you. I don't think it always. I don't think it's your best shot, actually. It's not the best shot that you can usually get. And yeah, so it was a bummer. Just overall it was a bummer. But I did think that I did like the shot. So I'll just say that. For Oregon, who was the player that just like for you was the standout? And we talked about a couple already. But yeah, who stood out for you, or who was your favorite player to watch for them?
I wouldn't say favorite player to watch because he looks like he's 40 years old, but Nate Biddle was really good. And like I said, when he got going in the second half, what did he score in the second half? Probably 17, 18 points.
Yeah.
But he was just bullying Crowell down low, and he could get any shot he wanted. He was impressive. And truthfully, I didn't, and he could hit, I think he had a 3 earlier in the game too. Mm-hmm. But He was an impressive player, and he's one that I didn't watch a lot of Oregon this year.
Yeah.
I knew about Shellstad, but I didn't realize how good Biddle was. And truthfully, he's the reason we lost today, I think. It's just his ability to get to the rim and finish uh, at the rim without a lot of contact. So, yeah, he was impressive. And like I said, that Bartholomew guy uh, was good too. And he's like a 90% free throw shooter as well. So when he got to the line late in the game, it was like, shoot, it's not the guy. But Oregon's a good team. It's a bad
Yeah.
loss because of what happened, but they are a good team.
It's just funny. I didn't feel nervous going into this game, but you did. And I feel justified in that we're up 17. You know, I feel justified in that we're up 9 with 4 minutes to go. And yet you're right. Oregon scrapped this out. And if you look at their score of like one possession games, they're 5-1 this year. And so when the game got tight and it got late, Oregon looked like the aggressor. They looked like the more confident team. They knew exactly what they wanted to do every time they went down the court, and we did not know what we wanted to do down the court. And so I think that's where if I'm guard, I take a timeout somewhere in that last minute. I don't save it because I know I got to rally my team together, get their heads back together, and say, "Hey, we have to finish this game." I think that's my one criticism of guard, with his timeouts, but especially in this game. I didn't really think about that till right now, but he has one left. He doesn't use it, and I think at some point you just have to get their heads screwed on right because it just fell apart and they couldn't stop the momentum of that.
Yeah, it's definitely been one of my criticisms forever with the guard era is that he does refuse to use timeouts. And even in the first half, he refuses to use the use it or lose it timeout. Like it's just weird. Like I get letting your players do their thing and this is a connected group and an experienced group. But at some point you do have to like in a game like this, you have to step in and be like, all right guys, just relax. Like we're gonna be okay.
He does
Yeah,
he does
just
take advantage of the TV timeouts. He's like obsessed with the TV timeouts.
he
So
does
like
love the TV timeouts.
because you'll see a coach take a timeout and then like the next possession that it's out of bounds or something, it goes to the TV timeout. So like I think for him, he's always kind of waiting for that. But that situation called for something different. It doesn't call for something different? Our grill. We know exactly where we want to go. But sometimes you got to make little tweaks here and there. You got to make little tweaks here and there. So to me, this is about real men of genius. Today we raise our tongues to you, Mr. Grill Master's torch guy. While other men settle for puny charcoal and lighter fluid, you harness the power of raw fire. Why use a match when you can wield a torch hotter than the surface of the sun? Whether you're searing a steak, caramelizing creme brulee, or just asserting dominance over your backyard, this baby delivers flames so intense they have their own zip code. You're not just grilling; you're conducting a fiery symphony where every sizzle is a standing ovation. And when the neighbor's propane grill sputters in defeat, you know you've ascended to barbecue royalty. Need to toast buns? Done in 0.3 seconds. Want perfect grill marks? Call it meat art. And when the neighbors peek over the fence, they won't see a man. They'll see a culinary gladiator tending to the mighty flame. Mr. Grill Master's torch guy. Because if you're not grilling with firepower, you're just warming up.
So good. We love the real men of genius.
Man, yeah, that whole commercial series. I don't even know how long it lasted. It's like
It's the best ever.
It's like top 3.
Yeah.
It's really good. I think Geico's still always up there for me, But hey, let's look ahead here, right? So obviously a really tough loss tonight or today. Man, we should have won the game. Really collapsed there at the end. 4 games left in the Big Ten. You have at home against Washington, kind of a bounce back game that's coming up on Tuesday. Then you're at Michigan State, at Minnesota, and then at home for who's the last game?
Penn State.
Penn State at home. So really, you have 2 games that are almost for sure, right? Washington, Penn State. To you, I guess, what worries you in the upcoming schedule, or where do you see us in the Big Ten standings or that picture? Yeah, kind of what are your thoughts as we go forward here?
Yeah, I heard a lot of people talking after the game today saying like, "Oh, it's not a bad loss. Oregon's a good team." And it's like, well, I agree, but if you look at the optics of the game, like I said, being up 17, being at home, like you can't lose that game. So in terms of the Big Ten standings, I this is a step back because they had a legitimate chance to win the Big Ten outright, um, or at least tie. And now best case scenario is tie for Big Ten. And I think in order to do that, they're gonna have to win out because Michigan is now 2 games up on them again. And Michigan's got a hard schedule. Don't get me wrong; they play Maryland, at Nebraska, at Michigan State. I mean, it's a hard schedule to end. But Washington should be fine. That should be, like you said, a get right game. At Michigan State, we talked about this a little bit off the pod. Like my sort of theory on Big Ten basketball is like the best way to salvage a bad loss is to get a good win. So basically, like if you're not expected to win a game, then go win a game. You're like if you're not expected to lose and you lose, then go get a game that you're going to win. Like not expected to win. That came out horribly.
That's
Uh,
okay.
but going to Michigan State is their chance to sort of pull another Purdue, right? And so if you go to Michigan State and win, it's sort of like negating the game today against Oregon. And I think we got a true shot against Michigan State. My only fear is that I watched them last night against Michigan, and their bigs are really good. And as we talked about, like that's sort of our kryptonite this year. So I think that'll be a tough game. At Minnesota feels like another trap game. I'm not gonna lie, it just makes me nervous in a lot of ways. Um, and Minnesota beat Michigan earlier this year too, and playing actually pretty decent. And then Penn State at home should be a nice way to end the season. So I do think we'll go 3-1. I don't think we can beat Michigan State, and I think we end up finishing either third or tied for third in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I feel really optimistic. I think Washington is a get right game, but I think you have to destroy them. I mean, I think we should be beating them by 20 to 30 points, somewhere in there. Um, and granted, if you win by 15, it's still fine, whatever. But I think this is a game where you just need to come out and show, hey, whatever happened last game, we're not thinking about that game anymore, right? We're looking ahead. And so I really hope they just come out on fire, playing their hearts out, playing really well, and just comfortably get up so much in the first half or beginning of the second half that they can kind of coast through for the last 15 minutes or so, get some other guys playing time, that kind of thing. It's just interesting looking at if you look at Wisconsin's history against Michigan State. In essence, you've beat them. I don't know. I think it's 5 of the last 8 games. You've beat them in East Lansing the last 3 years, or the last 3 times you played there. I mean, the Izzone used to be this impenetrable force that was just you weren't going to win there. And this is especially early 2000s. They obviously had their Final Four run in '99, or was it '98? '98 or '99, and then after that, it was like the Izzone for especially 2000 2010 was almost impenetrable. And it feels like toward the mid 2010s, the Bucky started to figure it out there. And so we've won 3 in a row there. So we're not going to be afraid to go in there. And I think at that point in the standings, the pressure might be on Michigan State, right, to hold serve. And so is it possible for us to go 4-0? Yes, I think it is. The trap game for me is at Minnesota. So if you win at Michigan State, I think you go into Minnesota feeling maybe too confident, and they've been playing really well. And they've won games that like nobody expected them to win. That feels like the game that it's not tougher than at Michigan State, don't get me wrong. But if we somehow win at Michigan State, that's the game where it's like, okay, you can't take your foot off the gas at that point. I'm like Chris. I think they do go 3-1. I'm not sure if you win at Michigan State this year, especially the way they've looked, and they looked really good against Purdue too. What I am happy about is that you in essence had a game where you had a ton of pressure, and for the most part you handled it pretty well. You handled the physicality, you handled all that pretty well. Obviously, in the end, a collapse, but they actually handled it pretty well against Oregon. and Michigan State will do something similar. So in that way, I'm actually, I'm glad they had a game like this in the sense of the physicality. And also, maybe this is just a wake up call. I mean, in essence, you've played very good basketball for the last 10 games or so. And we talked about the guard swoon, and it just didn't happen this year because our team is that good, I think. But maybe you got a little overconfident. Tanji's taking ridiculous shots that he was making, but they're actually not great shots.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you think the blueprint is out? Like, okay, now how do we beat the Badgers? We just put a ton of ball pressure on them beyond the arc, uh, and try to win that way. Or do you think this is just sort of a one-off kind of deal? Because this happened against Marquette too, and that's how Marquette beat us a long time ago.
I mean, I think in the tournament teams will do it a little bit more. We didn't really turn the ball over in the backcourt. Maybe there was one. Our turnovers happened when there's no movement in the 5-out system we run.
Right. I guess that's my point is that it forced us to sort of change our offense, and we're a lot more stagnant than we have been.
And maybe that's where you have this game, you have the Marquette game, and now okay, here's what we need to do in this situation. Because I think on some level they beat this press, but they're not trying to score. They're trying to take time off. And maybe they should have just kept trying to keep scoring. It's almost like what Kamari McGee did, where he beats the press, he beats his man up the dribble, and then he makes a really good play, right? This is about 5 minutes left in the game. Maybe you needed to do that. But this is the thing we're going to have to overcome. I mean, you are right. But I don't know if I'm not worried about it. I'll just say that.
Yeah, what's interesting is in the first half, if I don't know how it looked on TV, but Oregon came out really high ball pressure, just like they did all the second half. And we just kept breaking it down by attacking, backdoor cuts. And we were making it work. And then by the end of the second half, their pressure was gone because we had broken them down. And it's sort of like we got away from that in the second half. And I'm not sure why. I think it's just a lot of things that happen at once. We just didn't know how to compensate. But it's not like we can't beat that because we showed in the first half that we can. And we built a pretty nice lead over them.
Yeah, and that's where, like, for me, maybe this is a game. Again, you need to win this game, especially if you want to get to the top of the Big Ten. But maybe this is the wake-up call. You blew a 17-point lead. You're up 9 with 4 minutes to go, and you blew it. Okay, how do we respond, as a team? And so I think overall in the Big Ten standings, they probably end up third. They probably end up behind Michigan State and Michigan. I think they'll win 3 though, and I think getting 3 at least out of the 4 will get them third place. Which pick 12th in the coaches poll going in to win being 12th in the Big Ten. Obviously, it's an incredible job by Guard. Overall, in March Madness, right? They showed this on the screen a couple times. They said, "Hey, you're going to be a 3 seed." Does this game affect that? Where do you think we actually end up when it's all said and done?
Yeah, I think this could play a big role if we lose at Michigan State and if we get bounced early in the Big Ten tournament. I think that realistically puts us in the 4 spot. So I would say yes, right now we're in the 3, and we have a pretty nice schedule. So I'd say as long as we can lose to Michigan State, and as long as we win at least one game in the Big Ten tournament, I think we can solidify a top 3 seed. But I wouldn't be surprised if we drop to a 4. I don't think we can get beyond that, bearing a couple string of bad losses here. So I think we're kind of locked into that 3 to 4 range.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think if they had beat Oregon and then maybe ran the table or got pretty close, they have a chance at a 2. I mean, if they win the Big Ten, they probably have a chance at a 2 seed. But I think we'll bounce back. I think we'll be roughly that 3-4 range. I think we've shown that we can be a very, very dangerous team. I think today was just one of those weird games. Like you said, it's kind of a trap-ish game.
Yeah. I have a couple other questions for you based on today's game. What do you do with Xavier Amos at this point?
See, I actually thought he should have played more. I mean, he had the travel, right? I actually thought, though, he played pretty good D and was making better offensive decisions today than he had been the last couple of games. So I think he's still in the rotation. I think he should be playing more than 9 minutes, but he's probably 12 to 15 minutes in my head a game. But you, in essence, just need him to play smart ball because he did hit a three today. He's capable of that. And he does have a different kind of athleticism than Winters or Crowell. And so I like him with it. Uh, yeah, just uh, nobody saw Carter Gilmore, coming out of nowhere to kind of take that rotation spot. But I still think you give him 12, 15 minutes. Are you down on him, or what do you see his role being?
Yeah, just the last couple games, he's made a lot of sort of mental mistakes. He's fouled shooters in like an and one situation. He had a traveling turnover, he had another turnover today. Sometimes, like he had a bobbled pass today that went out of bounds. It's just those moments, like when he comes in, a lot of times it's when we've built up a little bit of a lead. And I feel like the last couple games, when he comes in, that lead starts to shrink a little bit, and he just makes some of these mental mistakes. He had a big three today, and I do think his ceiling is actually pretty high. I'm just not sure, like with this team where they're at, it's hard for me to tell if he's. I'm not sure if he's going to help them down the stretch. I've been waiting for it all year, and I think I'm his biggest supporter, but kind of at this point where I'm not sure. Not sure where he fits in the rotation, and maybe more minutes is the answer. But he's not earning them right now, at least from my perspective.
Well, and I just wonder if there's a game in the next four where he gets hot, and so they keep him in. Because I could see that happening with him,
He's
because
got
we've
some
seen it.
chances.
Yeah, I mean, and we'll play some worse teams here, so he should, get at least a little bit more playing time, especially in these home games against Washington and Penn State. Um, so we talk about like kind of the door closing on, maybe Wisconsin winning the Big Ten. But could you tell us about this kind of new Real Men of Genius garage door whisper?
Yeah, today we'd also like to celebrate Mr. Garage Door Whisperer. Anyone can open a garage door, but only a true visionary demands silence and grace. Our state of the art garage door whisperer transforms that screeching, clunky nightmare into a smooth, almost sensual experience. With every quiet glide, you'll feel like you're piloting a spaceship, minus the alien invasion. Your garage door is no longer an entry point, it's a velvet rope to your kingdom. And when it slides open with a whisper, it's like the universe itself saying, "Welcome home, legend." Never again will you wake the neighborhood while sneaking out for late night snacks. And when the man who's all about class, and for the man who's all about class, our executive glide mode ensures your garage door opens so smoothly it practically curtsies when you get home. Mr. Garage Door Whisperer, because real men know the sound of success is no sound at all.
And what's funny is I actually have to get my garage door fixed. It's been broken for a couple months. We've just been surviving. But I think if I had thought of it as a velvet rope to my kingdom, this might have happened sooner.
Right. A loud garage door is annoying.
Yeah, it is.
It can wake people up, cause the dog to bark. It's a lot
I'm
of
pretty sure
implications.
I tried to sneak out, and I was always afraid of opening the garage door if I
Yeah.
had to. When
Right.
I was in my rebellious high school years. Today, during the game, they honored Dick Bennett, Final Four 2000. Right? They showed the banner on the TV telecast. Any memories of that team? Again, we were only 12, so we were pretty
Yeah.
young. But what do you remember?
Yeah, so I think I started fully investing in the Badgers in kind of like that mid to late 90s, like that 97, 98-ish range. What I remember most about that team was their second round game against Arizona and knocking them off. Arizona was the one seed. And it just, to see it come full circle over time, to know we beat them then, we beat them in 2014, we beat them in 2015, all times when they were legit like national title contenders, was pretty awesome. And I told you this off air. Well, two things. Number one, I didn't realize Kirk Penny was on that team.
Yeah.
I kind of forgot about that because I don't think he really played much. But they played some highlights from the tournament games today, like on this video montage. And Gus Johnson was calling the majority of the games, and it was just like, dang, I realized Gus Johnson's been on quite the run here.
Yeah, I that is so crazy because I thought he just like showed up like mid 2000s, like out of nowhere, just had these like big calls. Yeah, I think for me, I don't actually remember the tournament that much. I think I probably was in. I just I don't know. I just don't have a ton of memories, but I do remember like Mike Kelly,
Oh,
who
Mike Kelly.
yeah, was just I think he like led the nation in steals. He was just like a defensive enforcer. Um, and that's kind of the guy that I always remember from those teams. But I remember we did beat Purdue in that Elite Eight game to get to the Final Four,
Yeah.
and it was just a big deal. We were an 8 seed that year, and yeah, I think if anything that put Wisconsin basketball a little bit more on the map again. You had player Michael Finley obviously in the 90s, but it's right after that we get players like Devin Harris, Alonda Tucker, um, Cameron Taylor. Like we ended up like actually I think from that Final Four developing a really 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 good program that Bo Ryan takes over and gets to the tournament 17 or 18 years in a row, whatever it is.
Yeah, I think
But
that really was the start, right? Like it's been 25 years of consistent success, and that was the team that sort of got it over to the hump of being a respected program.
when I think going into this year, like we don't really know what this team is, right? We were all shocked Chucky Hepburn left. AJ Storr was one of our leading scorers, and he kind of sucks now. But we just weren't sure what was coming in. John Tonji's the 292nd ranked, transfer, which is just insane to think about now. He might go from 296 on the transfer portal to All American, but yeah, it really did start the kind of the Badgers run, which is cool. Do you remember Dick Bennett's assistant coach that year?
I mean, I know Tony Bennett was on the squad.
Brad Soderberg.
Soderberg.
Yep.
Isn't that who he replaced?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
he took over for a year and then got fired, I think, shortly after.
Yeah.
Well,
Interesting.
hey, this was good. The first rendition of the Man Badger Fan podcast. We will be back with you, right? Over these next couple of weeks, we have 4 games. We're going to try to do some reactions as they come. We may not talk about the future as much, just in the sense of, just talking about this podcast, but we will be coming back to you, me and Chris, with more Badger news. Chris, any final thoughts?
Got to get to the line more on Tuesday. That's all I'm looking for. Just be physical, get to the line, and I'll be happy.
We shot 100% from the free throw line, and we lost the game. You're only 6 for 6, but it's kind of crazy.
I think we'll be okay. Washington has a player. I believe his name is Great Osborne or something like that. It's an awesome name.
Great Osborne. It's like, do you think they like loved Ozzy Osbourne? Like the great, or is he supposed to be a magician? The Great Osborne.
Okay, it's Osbor. Sorry, Osbor. But he was actually a high recruit. But I just love the name Great Osbor. And then today, who's the guy in Oregon? Supreme Cook.
Supreme Cook.
Gosh, some good names out there.
Does that just like set you up? One, you love Supreme pizzas. 2, you are going to be a chef and you will be good. Like your name is Great Osborne. Are you just going to be great? Are you speaking it in to the universe?
The
Just
ceiling,
something to think about.
the bar is set pretty darn high for those guys.
You can find us on X. You can find us on. We gotta put up the X. Thank you, Elon. You can find us on YouTube without video, if that's what you want. You can also find us on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. This is the Man Badger Fan. We'll see you guys next time.
Go Bucky.